Hello and welcome back to Citizen Speak. I'm your host, Garrett Martin. Thank you guys so much for listening. Donald J. Trump, in his press release on December 7th, states this: Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States until our country's representatives can figure out what's going on. Now, if you were watching this on Monday in his press release, well, at his rally, you would have noticed one very sad moment. When Donald Trump is reading the top of this press release, as soon as he says a complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States, the crowd goes wild. I don't expect anything more from Donald Trump's followers, his supporters. But how low do you have to sink to say that all Muslims are the problems that we're facing here in America? And that's why we have so many mass shootings. That's why we have so much crime here in the country. So we got to ban all Muslims. How low do you have to sink? And Donald Trump, he didn't go away from this. He was on Morning Joe, and he is touting the same crap. He's slinging the same mud. And Joe Scarborough actually cut him off this morning, which is great. He didn't cut him off for his anti-Muslim statements, his ignorance that he spews. He cuts him off because Donald Trump wasn't allowed Joe Scarborough to talk. And you can't step on old Joe's toes because he'll get all upset. And so he cut him off. He said, hey, Mr. Trump, if you continue to talk and not let us ask questions, then we're going to have to cut to commercial break. And Donald Trump says, go ahead and cut to commercial break. Trying to call their bluff. And then Joe Scarborough, in a huff and a puff and a fury, in a hurry, he goes and he cuts to commercial. Great. I'm glad that he did. But that's basically the Republican establishment equivalency saying to Donald Trump, you're done. You're absolutely done. We've had enough of you. I don't think that his supporters agree with that. I don't think that his supporters took kindly to Joe Scarborough cutting him off the air. Or Chris Cuomo having the interview with him today and asking him flat out if he's a fascist or not. I don't think that his supporters like that at all. He's leading the GOP field. It doesn't matter if a couple of Republicans hate him. It doesn't matter if a couple of Republicans don't agree with him. Because guess what? He has shown exactly what the GOP field is made of. It's made up of a bunch of hateful, bigoted people. And I'm not saying that every person who supports the Republicans is a bigot. Don't get me wrong there. What I'm saying is that people who support statements like Donald Trump and Ted Cruz and many other conservative candidates on the GOP side that make these bigoted statements, they themselves are indeed bigoted. Now, if you like Trump on other things and you don't think that this is right, then that's a different story. But the majority of people are supporting Trump because of his policies, or not policies, he doesn't have policies, because of his statements on things like this. Well, Ted Cruz, he was asked to comment on Donald Trump saying this, and Ted Cruz says this: a lot of our friends here have encouraged me to criticize and attack Donald Trump. I'm not interested in doing so. But I believe we need a plan that is focused on the direct threat, and that we're facing radical Islam terrorism. Yeah, there are radical Muslims out there. Nobody is denying that. And even in President Obama's speech, he did mention that as well. But that's not good enough. He has to say radical Islam. That means that he has to condemn the entire religion of Islam instead of just a couple of Muslim followers. That's what they want him to do. And people keep saying that, oh, well, he's not saying that. He's not saying radical Islam. But he's saying radical Muslims. He's saying extremist Muslims. But that's not good enough. That's not good enough. But let's look at the reason why I brought Ted Cruz up in this. I didn't just bring him up. There's lots of people who are criticizing Donald Trump or not criticizing Donald Trump. The reason why I bring up Ted Cruz is, well, he just introduced a bill, and what the bill would do is it would stop all Muslim immigrants who come from countries that are controlled by terror. That means that if there's radical Muslims in that area, then your country, it's banned. You can't have any Muslims come in from that country. No refugees from those countries, is what he's saying. And Cruz also supports that only good Christians come into the country. So, if he supports good Christians coming into the country, and he doesn't want Muslims from these other countries coming in, how hard do you think that it would really be for anyone to pass this test that he wants? A test where it's Christians only. It wouldn't be a very hard test, to tell you that. There was a viral video that just went around where these guys, they were in Denmark, I believe it was. Denmark or Norway. And they took a Quran and they wrapped it in a Bible coating. And they went out. No, they took a Bible and they wrapped it in a Quran coating. And they went out on the streets and they were asking people about it. And they were reading passages from it. And people were saying that, oh, they were shocked that this level of cruelty was in the Quran. Well, then they revealed that it was the Bible. And oh, man. But you can do that here in America. It would not be that hard to do. So, to Ted Cruz and people like him, they're no different than Donald Trump. Ted Cruz is wanting to ban, essentially, everyone from a country where there's terrorism that's controlling that country. But those countries are primarily made of Muslim people. So, in this bill that he introduced, he's not specifically denying Muslims to come in. He's denying everybody from that country to come in. And what that means is, well, since it's majority of Muslims, he's essentially banning Muslims from coming in. I mean, you gotta be kidding me. How has this idea ever worked in the past? And I understand that ISIS is a completely different threat than we've ever faced before. But this is a failed way of thinking. Because what that's going to do is it's going to take people who are from those countries and say, oh, America doesn't care about us. America doesn't like us. That's exactly what ISIS wants. ISIS is saying, oh, well, the Americans are evil and they hate you and they want you to die and starve here alone. And then you have people like Donald Trump and Ted Cruz who go, nope, no more Muslims. Only good Christians come into this country, and that's all that we need. Well, those audio clips get played back to those people. And then ISIS goes, oh, well, what does your family need? Oh, you need money, or you need water, or you need food? Well, I'll get those things for you. Just join our cause. You know, I was in the infantry in the United States Army. When we would come across people who were attacking us, if we had captured any of them, that was generally their story. They didn't want to hurt us, and most of the times they would shoot away from us. But some of them, they were out to hurt us, and they were sympathizers with the cause of Al-Qaeda or the extremists in the area. And so they would aim out to hurt us. But the ones who were not out to hurt us, but which still had the guns in their hands, or who were holding weapons for the extremists, they were out there because they needed money. They needed something for their family that they couldn't get. So they had to think of a way to get it, and they were presented with this opportunity, and they jumped at it. You know, when I was over there, over in Iraq. We had more success when we would help people, as in help them with either projects in their communities or give them money to clean up their area because there was trash everywhere. So we would give them money to hire people to take the trash out of there and to clean up the suburbs that they were living in. Or we would give them money for plumbing updates because there was sewage just laying out in the streets. You couldn't walk down most of the streets without seeing sewage. But those communities that we gave money to and that we personally helped out with our own bare hands, those people, they would warn us when extremists came to them or tried to do something. Or if they were going to plan an IED, they would warn us. They would find a way to tell us so that way we wouldn't get hurt or we could go get those bad guys. That's what's proven to work. Yeah, you can stomp on a couple of ants and kill the ants that are right in front of you, but if you're just trying to kill every single ant, you're not going to do it. And it's the wrong way of thinking. You got to help the people over there. You know, when we were in World War II, one of the ways that helped us win the war is when we would capture higher-ranked Nazi officials. What we would do is we would actually give them steak dinners and treat them nice and play board games with them. And then the Nazis would give us key information about when an attack was going to happen or where their troops were stationed at or where some of the concentration camps were. We got information from Nazis by treating them well. ISIS is no different. ISIS is still killing people indiscriminately that don't agree with their religion or their cause. There's no difference there. But I tell you what, people like Donald Trump and Ted Cruz, when they go out there and they tout this anti-Muslim rhetoric, what they're really doing is they're making people more angry towards Muslims, more of the mindset to give death threats or cause harm to others. That's what happens here. You see it time and time again. It's just ridiculous that we don't have people who are learning from this and that who are still openly supporting candidates like Ted Cruz and Donald Trump. Now, you know, I know that I sound very liberal most of the time, and perhaps I do have a progressive bias. But the GOP field is nothing like what it used to be. It's just a sad cesspool nowadays. If you want to know what your drunk uncle is going to say, listen to what the GOP candidates are saying. If you want to know what your old racist family member is going to say at the next get-together or how they think, listen to the GOP field. It's an absolute disgrace that we have a party that used to be fairly good. They used to do good things back in the day of Reagan. I know a lot of people bolster up Reagan, but Reagan helped out the economy fairly well. I mean, he raised taxes substantially, and that had helped the infrastructure, so that's great. Now, you'll have people who say, oh, well, we should go back to Reagan economics and have more of a trickle-down economy. Well, no, he actually raised taxes, so it's not quite what they mean. They like the idea of Reagan, but they don't like what Reagan actually did. But if we had more candidates like him, then things would be different. But instead, we're left with Ben Carson or Donald Trump or Ted Cruz. It's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous, this field that we have to choose from on the Republican side. And that's why when you have people like Bernie Sanders, and I'm not promoting Bernie Sanders here, but you have a strong grassroots movement for Bernie Sanders because he's actually calling BS on a lot of this stuff. I mean, on the Democratic side, you don't have Hillary Clinton doing that. I mean, she'll do it very lightly, but she believes in very, very similar things that Ted Cruz and Donald Trump do. She's not for being against big oil or Wall Street. Most of her donors come from there. If you want to know who a candidate's going to support, look at where their money's coming from. The exception to that is Donald Trump, to be honest. While he has taken some money from people, it's definitely not like someone like Jeb Bush, who has, last time I checked, and it might be different now, he has the most campaign contributions of any candidate this cycle. And he's not winning. Usually money wins you elections. It's not working for old Jeb. But we got to get out of this, back on track. We got to get out of this mindset of that all Muslims are bad. Let's look at the attacks that have happened this year. Many of them were not committed, most of them were not committed by Muslims. They were committed either by people who were extremely depressed, who were very suicidal, so they wanted to self-destruct anyway, so they just took it out on people to get cops to shoot them and kill them. Or they had their own religious extremism, which wasn't being Islam as the factor. They weren't Muslims. They were Christians. I mean, look at the Planned Parenthood attacks. There have been several arson attacks this year alone. You had the Colorado Springs Planned Parenthood attacker who was an extreme Christian. And you have many other Christians over the years who have attacked Planned Parenthood providers because they're Christian, and that's the exact reason that they say, I did this because they're offending me and my God. That's what it sums down to. So Muslims aren't the problem here. The problem is ignorance. The problem is our lack of gun control. And we have people like Ted Cruz and Donald Trump and Ben Carson and the other GOP field who, when presented with the opportunity to make great change, squander it. You know, Ted Cruz could have had terrorists not be able to buy guns if they're on the terrorist watch list. Oh, can't do that. Why? Well, if the Muslims made up the terrorist watch list, then Ted Cruz would probably have been for this. But seeing how the terrorist watch list is not primarily made of Muslims, it's made of people of all different backgrounds. Well, some of them are NRA members. Or some of them make bigger campaign contributions. But the NRA doesn't want this. Ted Cruz is getting a lot of money from the NRA. Lindsey Graham has gotten a lot of money from the NRA. Mitch McConnell almost got $1 million for his last campaign cycle from the NRA. These people aren't voting for you. They're not voting for your safety. They're voting for their own pocketbooks. They're voting for their own self-interest. But yeah, if the Muslims were to make up most of that terrorist watch list, there might be a different story. But since they're not, these Republican candidates who have the power to make those changes, who are in office right now, they're not making those changes. They're not saying, oh, well, yeah, this is a good thing. But I guarantee you that if that list was mostly made of Muslims, then they would have banned it. It's an absolute shame. And I wish that more people would call these people out on this. I wish that in interviews on the major TV networks that someone were to say, well, what you're saying, Ted Cruz, in your bill to stop immigration from these terror-controlled countries, what you're saying here is very similar to what Donald Trump is saying. How is yours any different? Why do you say that it's okay to ban people from these countries who are fleeing a war-torn country? And that's what they're doing. They're denying people who are coming from countries that are ripped apart by war, who face the threat of death on a daily basis. And they're saying, no, sorry, there's no room at the inn for you. How obscene is this? I mean, come on, people. If you're supporting one of these candidates, let me know exactly why you support them. Why it's okay for us to say, nope, no Muslims, when we have Christian extremists in this country. If anybody is an extremist and you don't want the Muslims in here, do you think that we should get rid of any extremist, whether they're atheist or Jewish or Christian or Buddhist, whatever it is? If they're extremists and they have intent on harming America, do you think that we should get rid of them as well? I'm going to bet you that most of the people are going to say no. We shouldn't ban just any extremist. We shouldn't kick them out of the country. But the thing is, though, is we have people who say, no, just the Muslims, just the Muslim. The Muslims, they're the ones who are doing the bad stuff. They're the ones who are attacking everything. They're the ones who are setting things on fire or shooting people up. They're the ones who are doing the wrong things. 2 weeks ago, you just had a Christian, an extremist Christian, shoot up a Planned Parenthood. Oh, well, that's a small case. That's a small case. No, you're more likely to be killed by an extremist Christian in this country than you are a Muslim extremist. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Find me on Spreaker or YouTube or SoundCloud. I'm on a bunch of different areas now. Leave me a comment somewhere, wherever you're listening to this at. I'll be on iTunes soon. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure that you find me on Twitter at SitSpeak. That's at CITZSpeak. Again, that's at CITZSpeak. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great night.